Emily had always been fascinated by antique stores. There was something mysterious about the past lives of the objects that cluttered the dusty shelves. One day she stumbled upon a small shop at the edge of town, tucked between two abandoned buildings. The air inside was thick with the scent of aged paper and wood, and the dim lighting cast long shadows across the room. She hadn't planned on buying anything, but then she saw it. A porcelain doll, seated on an old rocking chair in the corner. It was dressed in a faded blue dress, its blonde curls slightly disheveled, but it was the eyes that held her captive. Large, glassy, and eerily lifelike, they seemed to follow her as she moved. The shopkeeper, an old woman with deep wrinkles and piercing eyes, watched her closely. "You have a good eye," she murmured. "This one's special." Emily hesitated. She had always been wary of dolls. There was something unsettling about their frozen expressions. But the more she looked at this one, the more she felt an inexplicable pull. "How much?" she asked. The old woman smiled. "For you, dear, it's free. Just promise to take good care of her." A shiver ran down Emily's spine, but she took the doll anyway, thanking the woman before leaving the store. That night, she placed the doll on a shelf in her bedroom. She couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching her. Every time she glanced at it, the glassy eyes seemed to lock onto hers. She told herself it was just her imagination, a trick of the dim light. By morning, she had nearly convinced herself that she had overreacted. But then she noticed something strange. The doll wasn't on the shelf where she had left it. It was sitting on her desk, facing her bed. Her heart pounded. She lived alone. No one else could have moved it. She placed the doll back on the shelf, trying to ignore the cold dread settling in her stomach. But the next morning, it had moved again. This time, it was on the floor, closer to her bed. That night, she locked the doll in her closet. She made sure the door was shut tight before going to sleep. But at 3 a.m., she woke to the soft creaking of her closet door slowly opening. Her breath caught in her throat. She reached for her bedside lamp, flooding the room with light. The doll was there, sitting on the floor just inside the closet, its unblinking eyes fixed on her. Emily's pulse raced. She grabbed the doll and shoved it into a box, taping it shut. Then she carried it outside and threw it into the dumpster behind her building. She felt a wave of relief wash over her as she walked back inside. But when she woke up the next morning, the doll was back on her shelf, its head slightly tilted, as if amused. Panic set in. She searched online, trying to find out if the shop she had visited had a phone number. But when she looked up the address, there was nothing there, just an empty lot. Determined to get rid of the doll once and for all, she took it to the river outside town. She watched as it sank beneath the dark water, disappearing from sight. She barely slept that night, her mind racing with what ifs. But when morning came, the doll was gone. She let out a breath of relief. Maybe it was finally over. For a week, everything seemed normal. Until one night, as she was getting ready for bed, she heard a soft creaking noise from the hallway. Her blood ran cold. She turned slowly, her heart hammering against her ribs. There, on the floor by her bedroom door, sat the doll. Its dress was still damp, and this time it was smiling.